There is a specific feeling that only the noir genre can give you. It's the smell of stale cigarette smoke, the sound of rain on the pavement, and the overwhelming sense that the world is broken and you're the only one foolish enough to try and fix it. But here is the question that kept nagging me while I played The Last Case of John Morley: is atmosphere enough? We're looking at a game that drips with style. It promises a gritty 1940s investigation that feels like stepping into a Humphrey Bogart movie. But beneath the trench coat and the fedora, is there actually a game here, or is this just a walking simulator wearing a detective's badge? We aren't just reviewing the game, we're dissecting it. We're going to find out if John Morley is worth your money, or if this case should have remained cold. Before we step into the shadows, if you appreciate honest reviews that don't just skim the surface but dive deep into what makes a game tick, do me a favour and click that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and guarantees you won't miss the next mystery we solve together. Now grab your coat, we're going to London. Let's start with what the game actually is. The Last Case of John Morley, developed by Indigo Studios, bills itself as a first-person horror adventure. But that label adventure is doing a lot of heavy lifting. The premise is classic noir. You are John Morley, a detective who has seen better days. You are recovering from a fractured leg, a detail that is actually important to the gameplay, which we'll get to later, and you are summoned to 221B, sorry, wrong detective. You are summoned to a creepy estate by a wealthy countess. The job? Investigating the murder of her husband, Mr. Gulling, and the disappearance of her daughter. But here is the kicker: the crime happened years ago. The police have closed the file, the trail is cold. But the Countess is convinced that the killer is still out there, or perhaps still in the house. The setting is described as an alternate 1940s. Now when I first read that, I was expecting some steampunk elements or maybe some sci-fi twists, but honestly, it feels incredibly grounded. It doesn't feel like a fantasy, it feels like a memory. The developers have opted for a very specific aesthetic. It's not just old, it's oppressive. If you ever watch films like The Third Man or The Big Sleep, you know that the city itself is often a character. In John Morley, the manor is the antagonist. And then there is John Morley himself. In many first-person games, the protagonist is a blank slate, a silent vessel for you, the player, to project yourself onto. That is not the case here. And this is my first major point of contention or praise, depending on your taste. Morley talks a lot. He narrates his thoughts, he comments on the dust, he grumbles about his leg. For me, this worked. It felt less like I was John Morley, and more like I was directing a movie about him. I wasn't making the decisions on how he felt, I was uncovering his internal monologue. It gave the game a nostalgic feeling. It didn't feel like a modern high-octane thriller, it felt like an interactive radio drama. But this narrative-heavy approach comes with a cost: pacing. The game starts slow. I don't mean slow burn, I mean glacial. Because the developers want you to soak in this world, they don't let you run through it. You have to live in it. You have to breathe the stale air. For the first 20 minutes, I'll be honest, I was checking my watch, waiting for the game to start. But once the atmosphere clicked, I stopped checking the watch and started checking the corners of the room. So we know the vibe, but how does it play? This is where we need to manage expectations. If you're coming into this expecting Sherlock Holmes, Crimes and Punishments, where you have the mentally linked clues, make deductions that can be wrong, and accuse the wrong suspect, stop. That is not this game. The gameplay in The Last Case of John Morley is firmly on rails. It is, for all intents and purposes, a walking simulator with puzzle elements. You enter a room, you cannot leave that room until you have found the specific clues the games want you to find. Once you find those clues, a letter, a bloody handkerchief, a strange statue, Morley will often do the thinking for you. There is a distinct lack of player agency in the deduction process. You don't really solve the murder, you find the solution. There were moments where I found the clue and my brain hadn't even processed what it meant yet, but Morley's voiceover immediately said, "Aha, so the butler was in the garden at midnight." And I'm sitting here thinking, he was? Okay, I guess he was. This leads to the biggest mechanical flaw in the game, the pixel hunt. We need to talk about interaction zones. In a game where exploration is the only mechanic, the act of clicking on things needs to be buttery smooth. In John Morley, it can be a bit of a struggle. There were times I knew I needed to pick up an item, I could see it was right there, but unless I stood in the exact geometric center of the object and angled my camera just right, no prompt. It's a small thing, but it breaks the immersion. Instead of feeling like a detective scanning a room, you feel like a gamer fighting a hitbox. I'm curious though, where do you stand on hand-holding in detective games? Do you prefer games that let you fail and accuse the wrong person, or do you prefer a linear story where you can't mess up? Let me know in the comments. I usually prefer the challenge, but I admit, sometimes it's nice just to be told a story. That said, there are moments where it clicks. There are puzzles, mostly finding codes, unlocking safes, or manipulating objects, that offer a satisfying aha moment. They aren't brain burners, you won't need a walkthrough for most of them, but they provide enough friction to make you feel involved. And despite the on-rails nature, the game does a good job of making you feel smart, even if it's an illusion. Now let's pivot to what this game gets absolutely undeniably right, the atmosphere. If the gameplay is a 6 out of 10, the atmosphere is a solid 9. Earlier I mentioned that the game is slow. Morley is damaged goods. At first this annoyed me, but as the game went on, I realised this was a brilliant design choice for tension. This isn't a game where you can bunny hop away from danger, you feel vulnerable. The developers Indigo Studios have mastered the art of the psychological thriller. This isn't a jump scare fest. There aren't monsters popping out of closets every 5 seconds screaming at you, it's much more subtle than that. Visually, the lighting is the star of the show. The way the shadows play tricks on your eyes is fantastic. You'll be walking down the hallway and you'll swear you saw something move, you turn and it's just a coat rack. But the fact that you turned means the game has you. It has hooked into your paranoia. And the sound design? Chef's kiss. The rain is constant, it's a relentless drumming backdrop that makes you feel isolated. Inside the house, the floorboards creak, the wind howls through the cracks. I played this with noise-cancelling headphones and I highly recommend you do the same. There were moments where the hair on the back of my neck stood up, not because of what I saw, but because the silence was suddenly broken by a sound that shouldn't have been there. This is where the game justifies its existence. It's not trying to be a mechanic-heavy simulator, it's trying to be a mood piece, it's trying to capture that specific feeling of being alone in a big old house where bad things have happened. And in that regard, it succeeds wildly. However, we have to be realists. This is an indie title, and it comes with the usual indie jank tax. Aside from the pixel hunting issues I mentioned earlier, there are some technical stumbles. The physics can be a bit floaty, sometimes opening a drawer feels less like pulling a handle, and more like sliding a texture across a screen. There were moments of camera jitter that pulled me out of the experience, and graphically, while the lighting is superb, some of the textures when you get up close are a bit muddy. The character animations, in the rare moments you see others, are a bit stiff. They lack that motion-captured fluidity that we're used to in AAA games, but to be fair to Indigo Studios, they mask a lot of this with the lighting and the stylized art direction. They know their limitations, and they mostly hide them well. The other critique I have is about the linearity. For a game about a mystery, there is surprisingly little room for deviation. You are on a ride. A spooky, well-decorated ride, but a ride nonetheless. If you are the type of player who likes to break games to try solve the puzzle in a way the devs didn't intend, you're going to hit invisible walls, literally and figuratively. We can't review a narrative game without touching on the story. Don't worry, no spoilers here. The story deals with some heavy themes. It's not just a whodunit, it explores grief, madness, and the decay of a family legacy. As you piece together the notes and the diaries, you start to paint a picture of a family that was doomed long before the murder happened. The writing is solid, it's melodramatic, sure, it's noir, it has to be melodramatic, but it fits. And the ending, without giving it away, is satisfying. It wraps up the loose ends, answers the questions it poses, it didn't leave me confused, and it didn't feel like a cheap "it was all a dream" cop-out. It felt like the natural conclusion to the story they were telling. However, because it is so linear, the replayability is virtually zero. My playthrough took around 4 to 5 hours. Once you know who the killer is and once you found the keys, there is no reason to go back. Unless you are an achievement hunter looking to find every single collectible, this is a one and done experience. So let's bring this case to a close. The Last Case of John Morley is a game of contrasts. It is beautiful, but stiff. It's atmospheric, but linear. It is a detective game where you don't really do much detective work. So is it worth your money? Currently the game sits at a budget price point around the cost of a movie ticket and popcorn, and I think that is the perfect lens to view it through. Skip it if you are a hardcore puzzle gamer. If you want The Witness or Obra Dinn, this will bore you. If you need fast-paced action or combat, stay far away. And if you get frustrated by pixel hunting or slow movement speeds, this will drive you crazy. I'd wait for a sale if you are on the fence about the length. If you are tight on cash, wishlist it and grab it when it drops by 20%. And I'd buy it right now if you're a fan of walking sims like Gone Home or What Remains of Edith Finch, but you want a darker, grittier flavour. If you love the noir aesthetic and just want to immerse yourself in a moody, rainy mystery for a single evening, or if you treat games as interactive stories rather than tests of skill. For me, despite the jank and the simplicity, I enjoyed my time with John Morley. It scratched that itch for a moody psychological mystery. I'm giving The Last Case of John Morley a 7 out of 10. It's not going to revolutionise the genre, but it is a stylish, well-crafted love letter to it. Now I want to turn the investigation over to you. Does a game need complex mechanics to be good, or is a great story and atmosphere enough for you? Let me know in the comments below, I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to see more reviews of indie horror and mystery games, please subscribe and ring that bell. We have a lot of great games coming up on the channel that you won't want to miss. I've been JaeTeeGames, and I'll see you in the next case.